This demonstration is going to cover how to construct a French dart. A French dart will extend diagonally from the side seam around about the hip area up into the bust. The diagonal line can be straight or slightly curved. In the sample that we're going to be doing today, there will be a slight curve to it. And just know that French darts are found on the front of a garment. They are never found on the back. And again, this seam is going to be coming out. We're going to be creating a seam eventually that comes out of the side seam and curves up towards the dart. So one of the first things that I would do, again, this pattern was cut along the fold, and then it had markings to identify the match-up points for this French dart. And so again, you want to make sure that all of your markings show up on both the right and the left side of your elongated bodice pattern. And what I did, the first step that we're going to do is we're actually going to put in some stay stitching that will stay in here. We're not going to be removing the stay stitching. We typically remove basting, but we don't remove stay stitching. And what we want to do is we're going to want to stay stitch about 1/8 of an inch in from our actual stitch line, ending about 1 inch from the bust point. So what I did is I came back with a pen and I just gently sketched my stay stitching line that I'm going to stitch on. And again, here's my actual end point for my dart, which is near my bust, and it said to stop at about 1 inch. So I put a mark where my inch was, and then an inchward in, and then I just gently sketched the line that I'm going to stay stitch on, and I did that for both sides. And then I also wanted to indicate my fold line or my center line, so I lined up my ruler on the top of the dart, and then at the center bottom of this of the French dart, and I drew a straight line to connect those. So I would suggest doing that. You can use your tracing wheel to do that while you're copying your pattern, or you can do that right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some stay stitching. I'm just using a 2.5 inch length, and I'm going to start at the side seam, the bottom of the seam, opposite of the dart point. And again, we're just stay stitching right inside that seam, the seam line, which is where the markings are. So mine's about at 1/8 of an inch, and I think you should try to shoot for that also. And then we're just going to taper that and stop about at that inch away from the dart point. I'm going to do just quick short back stitching so nothing comes out, and then just stitch along the edge there. And when I get to the top, I'm going to stop, I'm going to do some back stitching there, and then I'm going to repeat this coming from the bottom. And I'm not going to turn and pivot like you would if you were going to do a corner and then come back down, because I want to make sure that the fabric doesn't pull inappropriately or incorrectly when I go to actually sew this up. So again, I'm going to start again at the seam line, do a couple back stitches, and then continue along that line, sewing 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch inward from my actual markings. And then when I get to the top of that point again, I'm going to do some quick back stitch or a back tack and raise it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and take some time and trim all my thread tails off so they don't get in the way when I'm doing all my other points. Alright, so I got all my thread tails trimmed off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slash through the center on that center line that we drew earlier, kind of like that center line, or what we would fold in the past. We're actually going to be slashing through. So my center line that I marked, I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my big scissors out for this because it's a fairly long line. And we're going to slash all the way up to where our stay stitching joined at the top. So I'm just going to cut all that straight up to the top, and I'm not going to cut through it, but I'm cutting right up to it. Alright, and then what we're going to do with right sides together, we're going to match up all of these markings. So I'm going to take my pins, just like I did with that contour dart, and I'm going to start at the top with my marking. There it is. I'm going to put a pin right through that top mark, and then I'm going to come back down. I'm going to put a pin at the bottom. Alright, now I'm going to go back through, and wherever I have my dots that I marked with my marker, I'm going to just make sure that they match up on the top and on the bottom. And I have to manipulate my fabric a little bit. And we're going to be sewing a curved line here, so it might be, you might have to go back and like repin things as necessary. Alright, before you finally do your stitching on that. That one matched up pretty decent, which is good. Yep, that one's matching up also really well. This one takes a little bit of finesse, not too much though. Get those markings on the top and bottom matched up. And again, my last marking here. Alright, I have all my pins in place, and see I kind of have a little bit of a bubble there, so I'm going to go ahead and flatten that out and reposition that. Okay. Make sure my threads are out of the way here. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to baste along that stitch line and then remove our pins. So again, I have my thread handy. I'm going to knot at the end here so nothing pulls out. And then I'm just going to baste right along those notches. And I'm going to start at the bottom because I'm right-handed. That works for me pretty well. And I'm going to just start right at the bottom, right where those kind of notch markings were for your seam allowance, or for like where you were going to make your seam at. And I'm just going to baste all along those marking lines. And eventually, we're going to take this out, but doing this step, it really ensures that the seam that we're going to make is not going to move around. Now, compared to the contour dart, the French dart does have curve to it. When we were doing the contour dart, we were mainly sewing straight lines and making that diamond shape, where here we kind of have an ovular shape that we're stitching through here. And so, I'm just working my way along from the top to the bottom. I'm getting close. And we'll be taking this out here before too long. But I'm gonna be sewing pretty much right over this basting stitch. Very close, probably like within 1/16 of an inch to it. I'm right along those markings, and then I'm gonna angle up to that top of the dart, and I'm gonna tie off my knot. Alright, tie that up. My knot's not like the closest it's ever been, but it's probably about 1/4 inch away from the actual seam, or from the fabric. Alright, so I have that all basted right along my my markings, and so then now I can go ahead and remove my pins. Then we're going to go back to our sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this dart from the end point to that knotting thread here, so up here, and then we're going to knot that off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove our basting and clip our seam allowances. And we call this a dart because it takes the shape of a dart, and we treat it like a dart, but actually all of this right here is now going to become our seam allowances, so we can go in and we can trim that up and snip it. So this is a dart, but it's also a seam, which is kind of confusing. but we do call it a French dart because it takes that shape and the actions of the dart. And so again, we have been working from this top side, but in order to stitch and follow my markings, I'm going to flip my fabric over and start from that side seam from the bottom end of the dart, and you're going to do some back stitching to start off. And again, I'm at 2.5 for my stitch length. I'm just going to do some back stitching here, going real slow, because this is a curve. It's not like a sharp curve, but we want to make sure that we don't get too off track, and we can always see our next marking, our next curve shape marking in our sights. Alright, I'm almost to the end there. A little bit more. And you always want to make sure that you taper off that edge, or you kind of do some curving on the top part of your dart, so that it doesn't come to a super pointy end, especially when you have a curved dart like this. And we're going to want to tie those off, so keep your thread tails long. And you're going to go back in, and I'm going to do that balloon dart, or the balloon knot like I have before, keeping it tight to the bottom.